You've been on the product creation side at Nike and Adidas, and the retail operation side at Diamond Baseball and Coca-Cola. Most people stay on one side their whole career. What pulled you across?
Yeah, thank you for having me today. For me, I think my story starts as a young man that was in sports. Grew up playing sports out of the Chicagoland area, and later received my scholarship to Miami University and played football and basketball, where we just went, I believe, 30-2 this season. After school, I was really looking for my career. I got a degree in business and I had several roles, like small jobs straight out of college, but I landed on a retail merchandising position for Nike in the Chicagoland area. And that included 30 of some of the greatest stores around. You got to think Marshall Fields before Macy's bought them over. You had a lot of Galleons before Dick's brought them over. Dick's Sporting Goods brought them over. You had Sports Authority before Dick's came and completely bought out all of that Sports Authority business. And you had a lot of urban retail marketing. So just think of like the small boutiques, like Success that's in Chicago, or you think now Kith has come to Chicago. I had all of that under my territory as a retail visual merchandiser. And I say that because throughout my career, spending 3 years in that first position at Nike in their corporate office, it really allowed me to understand people, understand consumers in the marketplace, understand conflict and conversation as a young merchandiser, having to go to a Macy's department manager and tell them their POP, their merchandising shop isn't created the right way. I need more assistance. You're missing certain things. You need backfill. So there was a lot of learnings that came out of that job for me. I was later promoted out of that role to what you call a special makeup product line manager for footwear. And I received that because everyone wanted to come to Chicago at that time. People were, market traveling from Beaverton, and we just knew the city so well because we spent so much time working with our accounts, but also understanding the marketplace and being able to have consumer focus groups and so forth. So I was promoted to do special makeup footwear for, think of Kohl's, J.C. Penney's, Famous Footwear, Shoe Show Shoe Department, Shoe Carnival, that kind of special makeup for Nike. And I did that for about a year. And then I was promoted to what you guys would call today the Global Sportswear Footwear Product Management role. And that role consists of Air Force Ones, Dunks, Blazers, training, Bo Jackson, Griffey, Foamposite, a lot of those key silhouettes. I was actually one of the last product managers that was managing multiple categories at one time. Today, Nike Sportswear is driven, so Air Force will fall under the basketball, and Air Max 90, Air Max 97, Air Max 95 will all fall under the running category, and they will have a sportswear person that gives that revenue. I was one of the last guys that all of that revenue was under my P&L, and I was the forecast for that. So this was just building stones of, one, I was an ex-athlete. Two, I started understanding consumers in the marketplace. I had a huge marketplace in the Chicagoland area that was underneath my responsibility. Now I'm the global sportswear product manager for some of the most iconic footwear in all of history. Air Force One, still one of the biggest shoes across the globe. I think for Europeans, Air Max 97, all the Tempo, the BW, all of that came underneath my product management. So now I'm building a lot of tools, as I like to say, in my tool belt, and just growing that business, right? Understanding how to forecast, sink or swim. I remember getting up early because my manager was a swimmer. He came in super early to Kelly Hibbler to swim. So I got up early because I needed to learn how to forecast, $1 billion business and half of it, over 60% of it, was Air Force One white, and the other, percentage of that. And how do I balance that out? And just really understanding how to forecast my business, how to build price points, how to understand color and merchandising. That was all I believe, the foundation for me coming back from that first store, understanding how to do visual merchandising, consumers in the marketplace. Then you go to SMU product manager, where you're making custom products for Kohl's. So they want one color, white, pink, 50,000 units. And you're like, whoa, this is a lot of volume. And then you go to a global business where you have to say, how do you learn how to forecast? How do you understand all of your goals, your KPIs? What does Western Europe, what does China, what does Canada, what does Mexico need? How do I make sure I cover the US? And by the way, I got to reduce my SKUs, right? So these start to become building blocks. There was a huge separation at Nike that affected my role as they went into categories. So I was kind of the odd man out. And I moved over to Adidas to have very similar roles with Adidas Originals. So I moved into Adidas Originals, and we're creating new SL Loop, Flux. If you think about it, we're creating new Adidas Originals products, and then boom, here comes Kanye. And then I moved into account management side. We're managing Foot Locker, men's, women's, kids, and apparel merchandising, right? So if you think Foot Locker, JD's, all of the global pieces from an Adidas standpoint, and Kanye really driving a lot of that. There was a lot of lessons learned, as I had seen Kanye on the Nike side in my sportswear group. And I was able to see Kanye again on our Adidas Originals group, as John Wexler's office was right outside of my desk, right? So got to get a lot of experience there to really just, again, add tools on my belt, but understand the difference between the Adidas consumer and the Nike consumer, not just within the US, but globally, and how does that start to come into play? In 2016, I received my MBA from the University of Oregon, and I was promoted to go under the umbrella of Reebok with Adidas. Adidas at the time owned Reebok. And at the time, I was promoted to director business unit. And that was a lot of the strategy that I learned from, again, Nike and Air Force One, and then how to introduce new models and new excitement with Adidas that we were able to bring to Reebok. So we had Future at the time, we had Kendrick Lamar at the time, we had Amber Rose at the time. So we were bringing in new silhouettes. One of the biggest things that took place for me was just separating classic leather distribution within the US, right? And what we did there was created a takedown classic leather for the value channel. Think of Kohl's, think of Famous Footwear again, and not give them the key model that Foot Locker or JD's or all those global accounts wanted. So we created separation, which was allowing us to grow our business. So had a lot of wins, did the Future Fury, a lot of those projects, did Iverson's project and retirement in Union Square. So a lot of my resume continues to build upon itself, not knowing at the time what was happening with me. Reebok had massive, over 300 people lay off, and I moved back to Portland, and I'm looking for different roles, and I landed on an opportunity here in Tampa, Florida with Fanatics. And Fanatics was starting a 10-year partnership to take on MLB, NFL licensing product with Nike. And I was able to step into those roles as an ex-Nike employee to be the eye of Nike for Fanatics, to work on MLB products specifically, as well as Fanatics product, and later MLB and NFL product. But it allowed me to understand apparel product creation, bring in Nike DNA. And if you think of those big wins, just think of Nike City Connect launching with Boston going in different colors and baseball uniforms. We were on the cusp of leading that, and my team worked on that product. But that goes back to understanding your retail landscape, merchandising 101, how to forecast your units, coming up with a strategy to not overflow Major League Apparel product. And for me, it was an opportunity to learn apparel, travel to factories now, travel to apparel factories. I traveled to footwear factories with Adidas and Nike, but now I'm traveling to apparel factories. I'm understanding cuts. I'm understanding dyes. So I'm really becoming an expert in both footwear and apparel, and then moved over to Diamond Baseball Holdings as a consulting piece as they were looking to centralize minor league baseball to manage that with Fanatics. Right. So they have over 50 minor league baseball clubs. They own and operate those clubs. I led over 45 of those retail spaces, new design of the retail spaces, uploading new shops, bringing new POS, getting new infrastructure put in place from a process, working with Fanatics to help creating a buy-in structure, new uniform structure. So there was a lot of work to be done with that. And unfortunately, private equity came into play and decided they didn't want us to partner with Fanatics. So that became a sticky situation. And then I ventured in, I call it going back to university at Coca-Cola. I mean, a global brand as big as Nike or bigger, and a lot of passion. I was able to come into a contract role where I was the project director lead for a retail store that opened in Mexico City for Coca-Cola. Half beverage bar, half merchandising, right in the heart of the Beverly Hills of Mexico City, being able to talk product, being able to talk product creation, be able to bring my experience of retail merchandising, because I can visualize how the store was going to come to life from my first job. Understanding different cultures and understanding that my Mexico counterparts were a little slower to respond, but I had traveled and worked with those regions before in those global positions. So I understood how to speak not necessarily the language, but to understand the culture and the timing that you need to give other cultures to be on time, to hit their goals. And for me, learning about Coca-Cola, the beverage bar, can customization, and just the intricate details of packs and legal pieces from Coca-Cola, those are extra things that I've been able to add to my belt so far. So while my journey feels like it's been a long one, I still feel like there's a lot of runway for me in the next opportunity that I've moved into.
In reflection on this experience, what do you think was the role that changed your mindset, how you think actually?
I think, the role that really changed everything for me was the Nike Global Sportswear role. And the reason it changed for me is that I was put into this role with not a lot of experience. So I really had to understand how to forecast a major business, how to reduce SKUs. It's easy to forecast, you have 60 models, and you're just forecasting 60 models every year. But when an organization says, listen, we need to get down to 30 models and your volume needs to grow, now you're starting to have to figure out how to maneuver that puzzle. And I'm very proud that I felt like I got in a really good rhythm of that puzzle to reduce my SKUs, not just in the US, but globally. I had more product that we were creating that other regions that wanted to adopt, which means that my units were growing because my line plan, my vision off of the silhouettes we were bringing in wasn't just focused on the US, it was on everyone, right? And the ability of having social media first starting, people being able to feel closer together as they do today with Instagram and TikTok and all those other pieces, we were ahead of the curve of seeing that connection of the continents being closer together, from trend, from style to what you see today, right? What's happening in Paris is happening in LA and in New York, and the kids know the same songs, they know the same, everyone's connected even more. So the fashion, the trend is there. And I think that position really allowed me to tap into that.
Yes, it was a breakthrough moment, probably for the culture, and you were at the right place.
Yeah.
Great. And you also mentioned all this experience is starting from the product design, product creation, and ending in the retail, actually. What do you think the synergy between those these two areas told you? What was this give you some unique perspective maybe on some problems and so on?
Yeah, the synergy is the consumer, right? If you are a pure product person, everything you do should be geared around the consumer, whether you're on retail, creation, brand marketing. Who is your target consumer? And when you can identify that, then it allows you to bring that synergy. When I moved into retail and started looking at retail and we're buying product, we're looking at product, I've already know how the product is made. So I want the best product for the value. And I always say product needs to have a home. You could build product that's super overpriced, but if no one is buying it, then you don't have a home for it. So when you have a home for a product and I identify a product and I could go to different vendors and I could see that they have a unique proposition for my retail business, now because I understand, the details, the trim, the price value that I'm getting for this product, to be able to put on the shelves, and I understand the consumers that I'm looking at, that makes it very unique, right? That's where the synergy lies. I think what a lot of people will say is that every store has a different consumer. True, true. But the values of those consumers are very similar. And what I mean by that is consumers want a great price, no matter what. Like you could go to Louis Vuitton store, people are still thinking about their wallet at some of the highest places, right? Like the perceived value of the product. Either I'm gonna pay high or I want the best price for what I'm gonna buy in here, right? So when you deliver that, regardless of your retail destination, you have to be mindful of your location compared to your competition. Because if you are super low and you're surrounded by a bunch of high level stores, then most likely your business isn't tracking the right way, because you're either leaving dollars on the table, or you're the last choice to come in and you're just getting like residuals, right? You've never seen a Five Below or a dollar store at like a premium mall, for example. And the reason I say that is in minor league baseball, the things that we were trying to influence our partners with was that, hey, your minor league baseball is in the middle of this cornfield town. I won't say a town because I don't want to be offended, right? But in that town, right outside of your stadium, there's a Dick's Sporting Goods, and that parking lot is full. So with Dick's Sporting Goods is a premium location. That's a premium store. At Nike distribution, they're better distribution. So you can't say that we want to sell $15 t-shirts when Dick's Sporting Goods is selling $40 to $45 t-shirts across the street. There's a gap that you're losing out, and getting people to see that, even though they've been in their market for so long, was the largest challenge, right? And I say that is because they didn't need to be at 15, they didn't need to be at 45, but they could have been at 25, 30, right? Because the consumer pricing just across the business, from oil prices to gas prices, consumers know that prices are increasing. They're just choosing to how they want to spend their dollar. And there's a perception that if it's too cheap, that it's like, I don't want it. Right? There's no value in certain things. I think there's certain things that you buy off of Amazon. You go to Amazon because you know you're going to get it for a good price. So even putting product on Amazon, you could put closeout product on Amazon, but the thought process is, how do you make sure that you're maximizing your dollars for your consumers in the marketplace?
Definitely. Yeah, yeah. And All the benefits, this is well known, but uh, do you maybe think that sometimes you stand between these two fires where the product team can pull in their way, the retail operation team can pull in their way, and what's your instinct are actually telling you where you navigate your decisions first?
Yeah, I think at Fanatics, I saw that the most because we were product creation merchandise team on the under the Fanatics umbrella that sold product to fanatics.com, right? So everything that you see from MLB, Fanatics is here in Tampa, it's sold in Jacksonville, and they are looking at all other vendors, including us, to say, hey, we want the best price. But with, let's just say, the Nike brand, there's already a premium price, right? So when it comes with that price, that perception, the brand power is always number one, right? And we have margins to maintain. I think when the crossroads are there, you have to be a great partner with your buyer and listen to them. I need a women's tank top. Yeah. I need it close to this price. We hear you. Okay, but here's the product vision of what we see from the consumer in women's tank tops at that price point, and we don't see it with bedazzles. We see it more in performance. We see it with large branding stripes and a logo. That's what we're seeing the young consumer, 18 to 27 is driving toward. And if we get that consumer, we're locked. And what we had to often do was to say that over loose, pedazzle, cotton tank top that you're looking for might not come from the Nike business. You might need to do that with Fanatics or find another vendor. So often, from a product standpoint, you have to realize what your brand value is, who your consumer is, and then there might be opportunities that you just might not pick up because you have a great vision off of where you're going, where your product stands, and what your brand stands for.
This is sometimes maybe a lot of lost in translation things going on. And do you think it's cost a lot if it's misunderstanding between these two areas?
I think there's always a give and take with buyers and product leads, right? With, let's just say, buyers and vendors in that term. And most vendors are the people that are, we were very unique because we were the product team that made the product, that was representing another brand, Nike. And we had to approach it as we were Nike selling it into our counterparts. If I was another brand, I would be probably handing that product over to a salesperson that really didn't understand the consumer. And that sales guy would just say, hey, you guys don't have this women's tank top that is this. I need you to go build one now because we're going to miss the dollars on that. Where I was fortunate enough to have the Nike business as well as the Fanatics branded business all underneath my privy. So when I briefed the product the next time, I had a women's tank for Nike that was high end, very performance driven. And I had kind of like an older tank top that was for maybe a consumer, 25 to 35 through the Fanatics branded, cotton base, low price point, in and out. And that way, my business was going to get those dollars either way, but I would give up, a women's tank top for the volume that I'm going to get out of a men's, performance tee on a Nike brand any day, right? That's not where I need to worry so much about. I need to make sure that my key silhouettes, my high volume items are still being checked. We're either anniversarying that number or we're growing. And then whatever women's piece, specifically in my business, whatever women's piece I could pick up, we check the box. That was a +1. But there's a brand perception that we needed to protect. And there was also, a brand vision that Nike had that we also needed to protect in those conversations. Both parties are right. It's just how do you come up with solutions to make sure everyone still walks away. I think for me, it was always giving my buy-in team from Jacksonville the thought process that I heard them, we addressed your problem, we are looking for solutions. Those are the key things that we want to do as a partnership.
You mentioned your Diamond Baseball experience, how you manage 45 teams and brands. And I'm actually curious how the operations actually look like managing such kind of business.
Yeah, one, everything always goes back to the great people on the ground, right? So the day-to-day merchandisers, the day-to-day operations guys. In minor league baseball, you often can have, a guy that was maybe a tarp puller now being put into a merchandising role and really doesn't know anything about apparel. He kind of has a passion for it, but he's still learning. But those are some of the greatest people that I think that I've worked with so far. From an operations standpoint, the way our partnership was working was that we had Fanatics buying over 60 to 70% of our product for most of our teams. Okay. And the thought process behind that was that they get a better price. They could get us better service. If you have a team in Texas that they haven't seen their New Era rep in months and they just get an email that their order deadline, now we could give them better service. They can feel like they're part of a bigger partnership. That was the theory behind that. The other 30% was for those guys to buy their own product with local vendors, local partners, local people that were part of the licensing group in their area that could quick turn, that could service them. So we didn't take away their ability to be creative, to be fast, but we wanted to bring a little bit more centralization by having key vendors, Nike, New Era, OT Sports, Columbia, just some of the 47th brands, some of the larger brands that Fanatics deals with across multiple leagues, across multiple, MLB, NFL, hockey. Fanatics works with those guys every day across those leagues. So they have a great rapport. That was ultimately the theory. And then we had to create an operational tool where our retail merchandisers can speak to Fanatics. So we created a box folder to help with that type of structure, to be able to drop in orders or comments. We constantly emailed. We had quarterly calls where we would set up quarterly calls to inform and educate. We created new processes for just inventory intake because, we were getting inventory for Fanatics. Every vendor might have shipped complete inventory. So we wanted to give them a structure off of how to take the inventory, how long to turn it around, what was the variances that were missing, and how to accurately come back to Fanatics and say, hey, here was the variances there. We also had to align with the sales reps for all the different brands to say who's on first, because you might have sales reps still calling upon those teams, and now they needed to shift their business to Fanatics, and their Fanatics rep will handle all of those teams. So that was a structural shakeup within the industry, right? Because you're kind of playing with people's income. That's a local sales rep for, let's say, a larger vendor. And then from a POS standpoint, Fanatics did a wonderful job of working and installing new infrastructure for like Shift 4 to bring in POS systems. Our leadership was working with FanMaker, so we introduced FanMaker for gift cards, but we had to get it into the new POS system. There was a lot of pieces. We actually received financial backing from Fanatics to re-merchandise, to re-update all of our retail stores. So during my time, within a year, we did over 11 remodels of stores. So they provided design, fixtures, partnership, and from our side, we had to do the site survey. We had to do the updates within the store to make sure the re-merchandising of the store. But a lot of my responsibility was helping organize that operational day to day from everybody. But I say we had a great team in place that did a lot of the heavy lifting for me. I just need to be mindful and be the voice for them back to Fanatics and back to other counterparts.
And out of all this restructuring process, what you are doing did for the business, what do you think was the most challenging one, the challenging piece to handle?
I think there was a lot of moving parts. I think the communication from the reps understanding their roles as this new business was coming in was challenging. I think just everyone understanding the goal was really not to take things away from those local guys. No one wanted to take their position. We wanted to elevate their position. And we talked about the communication, even internally, you can always question. So the fan maker piece, where we were getting, fan maker bucks for food and beverage. And those guys were already down, having everything set up, having all the codes of those gift cards set up for food and beverage. But they were under the impression that the food and beverage people were talking to the merchandising people. And that's often a disconnect in stadium or in venues, right? So people happen to be on the same page. When you have an organization that's really large, people are just looking very tunnel vision. No one had stopped and said, hey, Marcus, we got to get your guys up on these new gift cards. Because in most stadiums, there is a food and beverage POS that's different than a merchandising POS. Whoever could create one POS that has both will be a genius, but the item IDs are different. So we had to scramble to get our gift cards set up at the appropriate time right before opening day across our teams so that the sales guys can give these gift cards away to VIPs. They could get free food, but they could also use the gift cards to go into the merchandising shop, right? And that experience for me transformed over even into the Coca-Cola experience, as we had one POS and we had to decide and do a backlog because the POS was focused on beverage bar. But how do you have the merchandising set up? So we had to create a whole system off of the 4 characteristics, item ID, things that we could put into the system. And the merchandising team worked to do that, to track how they are selling merchandising and merchandise product out of a food and beverage kind of store because there's one POS, right? So those are some of the struggles I think that can be overlooked, but it comes with experience. I think for me, merchandising, understanding the two now, merchandising item IDs are way more complicated than I think food and beverage. And if I was setting up a system, I would use the merchandising system first and put that into a food and beverage system. Right, put food and beverage into a merchandising system, because basically a food and beverage, from my experience, might have like 4 placeholders for the name of, let's go, sandwich, the sandwich code, the price, and where product has multiple fields. And it's easy to put those 1 or 2 fields for food and beverage into all of those other fields versus taking all of the fields that come with, a VIN number, a SKU number, the color number, the shipping order date. There's so many different things that could come into that perspective. that I would ultimately do the reverse if I was setting up a stadium or a place that had both food and beverage.
Did you realize that it could be some difficulties and some challenges while you're executing, or this decision was looked right on paper and it's also turned out on the reality check?
I think in the last role, it wasn't my call to make. I identified it as a challenge, but I think we were so far down the road where our consultants had already bought the POS, and immediately I thought, yikes, we might need to look to get a different type of POS system, right? But that's part of the day-to-day for some people, to break that system down, to be able to pull out the financials, the sales of the product, and code it the right way. But for me, some of the things I was able to suggest was just even having handhelds in different spaces. Handhelds for minor league baseball was such a key component versus having people stand in line. It's all about the consumer, and the consumer experience is part of that. Consumers waiting in line, not having their gift card scanned the right way, or it doesn't work, right? That's money I didn't plan to spend. So now I got to not look embarrassed and take my credit card out when I had this gift card and it's not working because you can't get it to work, right? Oh, I'm going to put everything back. It totally changes the consumer and the consumer experience. So I think while the back of the house is often, it could be messy, it could be fast, it's very important in the moment to ensure that your consumer experience is flawless. And then how do you look to create solutions faster for the back of the house to make sure that you maintain a great consumer experience across the board?
And if you will redesign it once again, what's your approach right now will be?
If I was to design it, my approach would be, first it will start analytical. I would start with, hey, what's our forecast of beverage to merch from that standpoint? That's in kind of the Coca-Cola space. So I think I would start analytical, no doubt, to say, what's our split? What's our projecting split? And I think just remembering the volume, the projection of beverage was actually was supposed to outpace the apparel. But when you look at and remember, the Hispanic consumer in Mexico City love Coca-Cola. So the branding of the store, the apparel, I knew that the apparel was going to smoke. It wasn't my position to tell my new Coke members a lot of those things, but I knew the apparel was going to smoke and will continue to smoke. It is a destination place to go in. If you've ever been to Europe, it's almost like a true coffee shop, but it's a soda shop, right? And people want to stop there to pick up different trinkets from Coca-Cola, as well as get a beverage, right? Because they had an upstairs sitting area that was super nice. So it's almost like a Wi-Fi, Coca-Cola Wi-Fi experience that you're creating for a culture that really loves the brand. I would question, the brand experience in Mexico, if it's stronger than the US here in North America, right? Just from that standpoint, we have Coca at every corner. We could just grab one, so we don't need to stop at a shop. We're there. It's an experience. It's a shopping experience. So how do you continue to elevate the merchandising product, to elevate with the Coke beverage bar? They have a great plan. If you haven't seen the store, it's in my LinkedIn. From experience, you could tap into that. It's a beautiful experience. But from a retail sports standpoint, I think they have a really strong system in place, because there is no kind of food and beverage in that space. You roll up those dollars from the merch store, and then that financial guy can pull merch as well as food and beverage, and combine it, and you get very accurate numbers.
Great story. Love it. It's I think across this company and 45 distributed team with fragmented data, you actually had to do some decisions and take some risks, not based on all the data, but on the gut instincts. Do you have some example to expand on it?
I think the biggest one that I had to do some gut instincts on was during the retail installs, because DBH, the merch teams at DBH, those guys were outstanding. Like the day-to-day guys, they really are passionate about their space. But for me, working on the designs and understanding how design works and working with the agency, was an experience. And the experience of that was that I had to manage my GMs and leadership that were in those stadiums, the amount of times they can redesign things or change things in a design. Everybody that's never created product or worked with a designer don't necessarily see it firsthand. And working with Engine, shout out to Engine, they do an amazing job out of Portland, Oregon. We had one team that went out to maybe like 6 or 7, 8 different renderings, but it was getting down to minor details of this header needs to be this header needs to be that. So, some of the things that we changed as we went forward was that we allowed them to maybe do 3 different renderings with the design team. I spent a lot of time understanding the GMs and the leadership because those were my consumer base. So I listened to them off of what they wanted to do. And then I worked with the team to get the design as close to perfect. So when we passed it over to the internal team, their decision making was very small and limited. Right? I wanted to cut that time down for my partners there. I think when things got kind of tight as we headed into the new seasons, those guys wanted to get closer to opening day. So, for example, my thought process was that we will start making these designs being created in early spring, and then basically will be locked and loaded because it takes some time. So it takes some time. They will have their designs. And then as we get into late heading into 26, 1-1, 2-1, we can start tearing down the walls across multiple locations. And then we can start installing. The things that was out of control is tariffs. Where are the fixtures coming from? Are we going to have enough fixtures? So that was something we always had to adjust for and think about. Fanatics and some of the counterparts wanted to start the whole process now in January and then have it ready for opening day by March. That's 2 months. So 11 teams in 1 month. So a lot of things we were working on was that they were ensuring me that our vendor suppliers off of fixtures had enough fixtures in their inventory that we didn't have to worry about shipping things late and getting things into the country from a fixture standpoint. So there's a lot of moving parts with that. There's a lot of things I had to learn and bank on. From that, I had one stadium that had everything removed and the fixtures was late by like a week. So they had to, luckily they didn't get rid of all of their old fixtures. So they kind of had to take the walls down and then just have stuff on 4-ways within the store product on 4-ways. And then they quickly moved that out. But you can see the slow rise in that. The thing that you can never bank on in sports is weather. Can't bank on the rain out. You can do everything right, but if it rains for 5 days and that's a week of play, all of that volume, all of those tickets just gets destroyed, right? So as climate, starts to come into things. Those are if you want to be in retail where you're in a stadium, climate, location will play. If you're in the South and the Northeast, that will play a tremendous effect on you, because out West, you can always add a fleece, right? In the Northeast, you can always add a coat. But when games can't be played and consumers, again, back to consumers, when consumers don't want to show, then a lot of your business plans can then go awry, whether that's food, beverage, ticketing, as well as merchandise will be affected.
By the way, have you considered the weather forecast for your general forecast models to understand whether it will be worth to invest?
Listen, that is a Rubik's Cube that there's a lot of people that spend time in looking at the weather. There's weather trackers, I know, in all of baseball, minor league specifically, as well as major league. There's weather trackers. People are constantly looking at how that's going to play, and it's communicated throughout the organization. So, the merchandiser, for example, could get out the rain jackets, or they can put certain things out. Oh, we need umbrellas. Oh, it's going to be cold. Let me put more fleece on the floor, right? So people have an understanding before the consumer walks in the stadium of what that consumer journey, let's say if you're in Yankee Stadium, once you get off the train, man, you come down the stairs and you're walking into the stadium, those merchandisers know, hey, it's supposed to rain later tonight. There's a reason I got ponchos up at the top of the counter, right? So when it does, you guys can run in here and buy a few, right? So that's all part of the equation. That's all part of the day-to-day. I think in traditional retail, you don't have those equations. If you have like a Nike Town where you're just having consumers come on a regular basis, you're not looking at those equations. But if you're in team sports, you're for sure looking at those equations.
And what else, maybe the signals that you wanted to receive, but you hadn't had? And if this is someone that changed the game, maybe some data signals.
What do you mean by signals? Give me an example. Like,
I don't know, additional sources of data, additional external information, marketing news, something from your sales team, something from your marketing team, from transactional data.
Yeah, I think modern news. Yeah, everyone needs to understand what's happening a little bit more with modern news in the world, specifically in trade, in business. Just what's happening from a day-to-day culturally. Your KPIs can tell you everything in your business: your volume, your forecast, your revenue, your growth, your profit, your inventory, your margins, all of those things. You can walk into any business, whether it's food, beverage, and understand what's happening. If you're a great businessman, you should be able to walk in, look at the data, the analytics. If I was doing retail for a gas station and I had to understand what was my volume driving at the gas station outside of gas, inside of the retail store, I should be able to go into the analytics and say, all right, water is the number one item that I'm selling the most, right? So I need to make sure that the refrigerators are always working, or we need ice to make sure we're selling water, and then whatever follows after that, right? And I use a gas station because that space is very similar to almost a retail store, specifically in sports, because you have key items. When you walk into a gas station, your coolers are going to be in the back, your Slurpee and food machine, they're almost the same. And then you have a lot of little stuff, peanut M&Ms, packages, chips, right? When you go into a sports stadium, there's the jerseys, there's the headwear. Those big items are right there, certain things. And then as you get to your queue, there's a lot of little stuff. There's glasses, there's the little chain for kids, there is little toys, there's keychains, there's a lot of little stuff. So the comparisons, I think, is very similar. I think I wish more companies would open their eyes, because if you work for a gas station company, they're like, oh, well, you've never done this before. Or, have you done CPG before? Hey, the data tells you that this is what the data is telling me. Here's the common knowledge. Here's the best practices. And oh, yeah, you have a POS system. I just need to learn your POS system, right? But the financials, the KPIs, the measurements of the KPIs are there. In sports is inventory, right? How do I manage my inventory? In food and beverage is how do I manage my shelf life? So, how long does syrup last in a food and beverage store? 4 months. Okay, I got 4 months to sell this and I need more of that. In apparel, hey, we're low on inventory. Well, we can't get back in it till 5 months because we got it from China. So we're completely out of inventory on that. Or we have a vendor that could get us back into inventory within 30 days, right? So those things are very similar across the businesses. And I've talked to a lot of different CPG brands as well as having experience there. And those are the parallels when I talk to them, that they all go, oh yeah, that is similar. But that you have to be able to think outside of the box, and let the data take you where you need to be.
Speaking about the data, I love this topic. I'm a data guy. If you would be limited to maybe 3 metrics that you need to check every day, what would it be?
That's a tough question. For me, I want to check. It depends on the business, but I will always say the sell-through, because I think that is. Hey, what was the sell-through on this item? I will always want to know the inventory, right? How much of that item do I have? Because if I have something that is selling that's hot, do I have enough to make me through the rest of the week or the month? Do I need to buy more, or will I be in trouble? Right? Those two, I think, really go hand in hand. And then I don't want to say margin. I would probably say turn. How fast that something is moving. And those three go hand in hand. Hey, I'm selling this. What's the rate I'm selling it at? How much inventory I have? And from those three things, I should be able to make a lot of different decisions, right? And that is from a retail standpoint. On the branded side, I need to know what my forecast, what my price is, what my margin is, right? Those things are, what's my margin? What can I price it at? What's my forecast? How many did I sell last year, right? That's on product creation, merchandising, basics. But on that retail standpoint, I need to know how I'm moving to know how long I need to get back into it. Because again, what I don't want to have is bad consumer experience.
Yeah, and because of that, was there any metric or something that you stopped tracking because it was misleading? So it was maybe a poor data quality or something?
No, I can't really put I think what often is misleading in retail is how people are pulling the data. Okay, meaning if my finance guy isn't pulling from the same reporting system that the rest of the merchandising team is pulling from, then we're off. Or if I'm looking at data, I'll give you a perfect example. There were teams, let's say we have 50 teams. I was only responsible for 45 because we had 5 that we didn't have on the POS system or any of that. So technically, all 50 were included. But for me, I'm only worried about 45 because that was 45 I can track accurately. I understand what I bought for them. I understand what's been put into those stores. I understand what their POS system is looking at. But I might have someone else looking at all 50. And I'm like, Yeah, that's great. I don't know what those fives are doing. I'm not even looking at those five yet. I'm kind of gearing to move to those five, but those five, they could be reporting completely different, right? Because they're not in our system. They're still using hand reports. They're emailing the reports on a daily basis to the finance manager or director, or right. So it's not as simple as they're underneath our POS and we can pull the data the right way. That is where I think even at Fanatics, where you can look at biometrics or all the different tools, Tableau, all the different tools you can pull from. If sales isn't looking at it the way that product is pulling it, then you're off. So one thing that we went to, my friend John Lee at Fanatics, I said, hey, John, can you just send out a report? Like, you're already pulling this data and sending it to sales. Instead of us trying to pull the data, why don't you pull the data? Here's some things we want to see from a merch and product standpoint, and distribute it to the whole team. Now we're all looking at the business the same way, and we're not walking into a leadership meeting. I've got on my computer, I'm pulling the data, it looks good, and then I get in there and start talking about my KPIs, and the sales guy goes, where'd you get that data from? That's not what I'm tracking on. So now there's an internal battle off of who's right, what are we looking at, because we're pulling it from different ways. That is one of the biggest, I think, opportunities for most, not just companies, but retail, whatever type of company you are in. If you're not looking at things the same across the board, you're often going to walk into a meeting not fully aligned.
Definitely. This is actually a typical problem. This because a lot of systems are going into play, and if you don't have decentralized system, data warehouse where the data is in unified layer, and you have all the data governance policies set up, so all the users and consumers of the data have their own permissions and their own views, but they're at the same time built at the same source of data, same ground truth. This is, yeah.
Absolutely. And what happens is that people are only looking at what they're comfortable of, the data or the system that they're comfortable using, right? So Brands BI has a lot of information, right? But if you're not pulling it correctly, it could all be off, period. So for me, I often try to get with my counterparts and say, listen, you guys are pulling it probably a little bit more often than I am. You guys are finance directors or leadership. So let's get aligned off of what you're pulling. And so I'll pull it the same way. My team will pull it the same way. Or you can send it to our team as you pull it, and then we can do our assumptions off of the data that you pull to plan our business accordingly.
What would you tell someone stepping in the complex distributed retail operations for the first time? What would you advise them?
Oh, I'm gonna tell you what an old Nike guy, Sam Siegel, told me. Learn how to listen. Listen, 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 listen. Because the tribal knowledge that you pick up is more important than your win that you're going to try to get when you first get into a position. And that win might look like a win to you, but it could be perceived as a loss to others, or it might not sit well with your team. So coming in new, listen, because there's so many things that people might walk into that you might have the experience, but you don't understand the tribal knowledge of the environment. And without the tribal knowledge of the environment, your eagerness for the win will set you back in the long haul. And examples of that is if, if you didn't know, Chicago Cubs doesn't ever want to use a red blank when building product. And you come in and say, oh, that red shirt will look great. Let's use the Cubs off of that. And everyone will look at you and be like, hey, well, some people will let you fail. And they know that the Cubs don't want it on red. And you'll get in front of the Cubs and be like, we put it on red. And they'll be like, no one told this guy that we don't want our product on red, right? It's blue, it's gray, it's white. We never want a red blank. But if you didn't know that part of the business, you're gone. On a retail standpoint, you know, you could come in as a retail director, and I had an example of this. I was talking to a brand, and they were looking for a new retail director, and some of the product in their store was from a vendor that the owners were best friends with the company's owners. Oh, good. I hear you off of that. Because I can tell by the way that it was sitting there that it's not selling. But now if you come in and say, oh, this Smith brand is terrible, we're going to get rid of it. And you didn't know that that brand is friends with the owners. How does that sit well? That's the common knowledge that you need to kind of just understand. The data will help you get there. The data will help you with your assumptions. You know, in MBA school as well as in college, when I mentor kids and I give presentations, the thing that data tells you, it isn't the truth, it's assumptions. Are your assumptions right or your assumptions wrong? Did your assumptions work? Did you grow the business? That's what data tells you, because you have to make your assumptions. I sold 10 t-shirts last year. I want to sell 11 t-shirts, and the data says that I actually sold 12. Or I'm short of that, right? So heading to next year, let me just start with 12, because I don't know if I know that 10 was great. I might could get 11, but I'm an anniversary, at least what I sold last year, and offer that, because I might have been short. I might have thought I only needed 10. The consumer decided and bought 12 of different styles that were really strong. So let me at least anniversary that. And then I think my design is going to be tremendous, that I'm going to be up 2 to 3%. Those are all assumptions. And I think when more people understand that they listen, they make assumptions, the data tells them about those assumptions, then you're a lot stronger, because when you build next season or you're going to buy next season, whatever you're doing next, you have to be, I don't know if it's an elephant or a tiger or a lion, whatever. You have to have a long memory, right? To say, oh, this year at the same time, this is what happened. I'm not going to make that mistake, and I'm gonna be prepared for this, right? I'm gonna assume that buyer is going to ask for that woman's tank again. So here's how I'm gonna be prepared for that. I'm gonna assume that my business is going to be better. So here's how I'm gonna get over the obstacles of not hitting my number last year, right? Those are all the assumptions that I think that need to be made.
Yes, this actually style of thinking and working through the data is should be the standard for the industry. It is not right now. It's not.
Let me tell you why it's not. Let me explain why it's not. And this might be a bad theory. When you're consumer first, you have the art and the science. The art is my pitch is, the art is the consumer in the marketplace and kind of old school way of thinking. The data can drive you with social media, with Amazon, with this, the data, the data says this. The data says I can sell hundreds of more. The marketing data says I'm getting this many likes. The data says I'm getting this many consumers coming in. But really good people understand the science, because at some point, really good people understand the art. At some point, the consumer will change. The consumer will leave you. The consumer will do something different. The consumer does not care. The consumer looks for him or herself, right? And if you don't add that into the mix, then you can just buy, because you're not thinking, where is the pivot going to happen? Where's the trend going to take me? When is there going to be a rain out, right? Like, you're not prepared for that pivot. And now you're stuck with too much inventory. You didn't sell, you overbought, just because you were just looking at the data. The data says I have plenty of inventory. I could sell this forever. I'm still selling this at this rate, this turn. Then all of a sudden, what happened? Oh my God, they stopped buying it. You humped it too long. So you got to understand the life cycle of product, and that comes with a little bit of art. If you don't have that art to match with the science, you're dead in the water. That's just me.
Yes.
That's my 2 cents.
Yes, definitely agree. And this actually, this synergy between the science and art, it will be a new art, and the standardized, because the competition is also growing, and the world is driven by this. You should also be careful on it, and also do the critical thinking stuff, because as it says in data, is garbage in, garbage out. And
Yes.
if you have low quality data, it will be much worse than no data at all, because now you think that it's give you some reassurance on the decision, versus where you have no data, you belong on your instincts. So
Correct.
this is actually should be always double checked. But the reality is should be data driven for every organization.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
great. Give me some words for the finish. What would you tell to the listeners, to viewers? What would you advise?
I think my motivational thing right now is that we never lose. You only win or you learn. If that makes sense. You never lose, right? You're either going to win or you're going to learn. And it comes back to, finding a job, finding the next step, being whatever you do. You're never going to lose. You're either going to get what you want, or you're learning something valuable to be better, right? And I think that in business, you either hit your target, hit your KPIs, or you've learned some valuable lessons to be better next time. And I think more people, when you learn to listen, when you learn to create solutions, when you go to your counterparts, come with a solution. First, come to listen, understand their point of view, have a solution, work cross-functionally, and remember, you're not going to lose, right? You're either going to win or you're learning something, but you got to take your learnings and apply them for next time, right? And I think throughout my career, people say, wow, you have a very different career, right? I am building a career to be a leader of an organization. I could talk product, I could talk merchandising, I could talk retail, I could talk .com, I could talk being in the back room with you, right? I have those experiences. Now I could talk food and beverage, right? I have those experiences to be able to lead others, to grow others, but allow people to find their own way. So I don't want to leave this conversation being like, hey, here's what you should do. But I just say, find your own path, but listen, learn, and grow from other experiences so you can see the pitfalls that come in your path to make better decisions. Because we all are going to have different paths, but we all are not, we're all are winners, or we're learning.
Oh, this guidance, this motivational and spiritual guidance is really cool. You brought that energy. So thank you very much for the call. It was a pleasure to talk with you. All the contact information, it will be also under this podcast, so the viewers can reach out to you. And it would be nice to have you other time.